Thank you for having me at MIT Boston. It's a privilege. I'm going to show you very exotic pictures. This is where I'm from. I'm from nomadic background, and celestial mountains meet stars. That's what I always thought. If I go far enough, I can reach the stars. We had 4 seasons, long summers, and I was one of those free-range children with very little micromanagement from parents. And I always remember at that age, I used to come home only when I couldn't see my friends. That was the sign it's time to go home to have a supper. It was so great. This is my village. We had no phones. We had one phone in the post office for emergencies. And a post lady on a horseback, she used to deliver a telegram saying, "Oh, Auntie Rosie wants to talk to you next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. So when it's next Wednesday, my mother used to go to post office, and the connection was so bad, she used to shout so loud, a whole village already knew what we were talking about. Then she used to come out so happy and say, "We're going to the wedding next month," for example. And we used to travel on the horse carriages or cars. We also had organic food, only 2 television channels, which was so dead boring, I never watched it. And also, we lived in harmony. We believed in our ancestors. Our ancestors passed down the wisdom that we cannot exist alone. I was always told, never cut trees. Trees have souls. And we had culture. This gentleman on the right corner, bottom, he's telling a longest poem in the world by heart, which has 500 rhythmical lines, and it was registered in World Guinness Book. And it was also registered as most accurate recording of a history of that part of the world. So those knowledge and training your memory culture was passed down. I brought up believing in my ancestors. Interestingly, being a nomad, we also had a library. That was a very magical place for me because by the age of 10, I already read books of Charles Dickens. I knew how Baker Street looks like in London and what was the Scotland Yard up to from Sherlock Holmes, of course. And many other European authors I already knew. And therefore, I found out the Earth is so big and is so beautiful. And I always wanted to go beyond those celestial mountains and see a nice world. And seeds of dream was already in place by then. I wanted to travel the world. It's not so easy, unfortunately, because we had communist regime. Is there anybody here ever lived under communist regime? It's tough. So my mother and father, they were young. They said when communists came, they arrested so many people who ever spoke up, who decided to write a book or poem, anything, and they never came back. So my father and mother, they had to kneel to communists. So we have parents and we have education. We were not allowed to practice traditions or believe in God. But you can't stop me. I was growing, I was a teenager, and I worked it out. If I do well at school, I could go to university and leave my village, at least. So I did. Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. No parents, no mother, and student life, lots of interesting people I met. It was good. However, another problem. My mother said, "You grew up now. You are a young lady, and young ladies get married." So I could have been a wife of archer, eagle hunter, wrestler, chief tribe, or university graduate. However, there was a huge problem in the country. Every year, the number of women who committed suicide was rising, and they were married. Some of them, they had children because they couldn't stand the violence against them anymore. Imagine having a child and knowing that child will be left with no mother and to that violent man. She must be pretty devastated. So, knowing all that, I couldn't choose any of those guys. Also, the bride kidnapping was very widely accepted. Any guy could just kidnap any girl, rape her, and make her marry. And imagine somebody who brought up like me, very loved, youngest, only girl in the family, sent to university, and something like that happened. Lots of things, lots of women went through that. So I found a solution. I didn't have to marry them. I found out through education program in the university, I could marry a Westerner. If I did, I could be leaving the country because of human rights. So I met my future husband, beautiful person, English gentleman, and I moved to England. And my dream came true because I love traveling. And England was such a fascinating place, and it was shocking for me because I'm a nomad. We don't have permanent structures. Suddenly, this Tower of London was built 1,000 years ago, and the house I live in now dated 1876. The history is so rich, and in my opinion, Europe is the most fascinating place because of so many cultures living together. The architecture is so great. I had fantastic life for time being because we traveled, my husband, my daughter. One holiday was abroad, one within the United Kingdom. That's all we could afford. And I wanted to see beyond Europe. I wanted to see the rest of the world. And I came up with a solution. If I change my career, I found out someone else can pay for private jets, for first class flights, and to stay in most exclusive places I could never even find on the map because they're not for tourists. And guess what I changed to? I become a high caliber nanny for rich and famous. The high caliber this term comes from agency. They advertise, they say, we're looking for a high caliber nanny with certain qualities, and most importantly, someone who is prepared to travel extensively. I loved that part. So I fell into that category because I finished 2 universities in the college, had extensive psychology studies, diploma in childcare, you name it, anything to do with children. But I couldn't swim, so I had to learn fast. And my life completely transformed because being from communist regime, imagine being told money is bad. You don't need money, you just keep your head down, you'll be fine. Riches are evil. I was really shocked because I remember the day as how my employer wrote a check for 2 million for his school he used to go. Another employer, he wrote a check for 1 million to support Brexit, and many other checks, and many other helps to improve people's lives in rural communities. They built factories, production, and when I fly sometimes, actually all the time, I see their products around in hotels, in hospitals, in duty-frees, in restaurants, shops, and I feel so proud because I was part of it. Whilst they were creating, they were genius, by the way. They create things, and I was nurturing their babies. And sometimes I used to take part on testing the products. I interviewed 120 rich people. It was very easy because every time I have contract, the baby has parents. Those parents have elderly parents, they have friends, they have circle. And I only had one question to ask: what sort of parenting they received? That's all I wanted to know. And interestingly, it was an eye-opener for me. I used to think in order to be successful, you need to have a right start, or your parents left tons of money. Majority of these people, they were very humble. They had humble background, and some of them even were from poor background and deprivation. I can give you an example. Julie, she's a businesswoman. And looking at Julie, you would never guess what sort of childhood she had. So she used to come home and her father was drunk. He used to be so violent against her mother, siblings and her. They used to flee the house and slept numerous times in neighbors' houses to wait till he's sober. Then she used to wait for her sibling to come back from morning school so she could wear her shoes to go to school. They only had one pair in between. Parents couldn't afford. And when she finished, before finishing school, she said she felt academically far behind because she was classed as a child with disability. She was wearing thickest glasses and still couldn't see what was on the blackboard. The sciences were taught on the blackboard, so she fell behind academically. And parents took her to capital city when she finished school and left with some relatives for better life, and you will never guess what happened. She was slaved for 2 years. Slavery does exist at this day and age. We have to be very vigilant and mindful if we see the signs. The poor girl, she was cleaning, cooking, looking after children. She never got paid, never even had pocket money to go anywhere, and never had even decent clothes on to wear. One day she was cleaning the house and she saw a newspaper where it said something about university admissions. So she sneaked out and made an application. Then another day, she attended a test and she was accepted. So she was out of that situation. She went to the market store and asked if she could sell someone's goods to make money. And very quickly she gained the reputation of very honest, hardworking young lady. And the owner of that market store gave her a loan so she could sell her own stuff. Within 2 years, she moved to wholesale. Then she went to China and made direct contracts with suppliers. And her business exploded. This year, she's coming to Manhattan, New York, California, and one more state to branch out. She is very successful. She has children. What I learned from these people, that you don't have to have inheritance. You don't even have to go to university. Religion, race, location doesn't matter. And also you can be a late bloomer because she was in her 20s. I wanted to know, after interviewing and working for so long, by the way, I'm 53, and I worked for 30 years as a nanny. And after being in this circle for so long, and talking to them and gathering data, I wanted to know, what do they have in common? And I worked it out. They all had exceptional problem-solving skills. As a founder of Blue Parenting, and Blue Parenting is a combination of Eastern parenting and Western for efficiency, I want to share with you with few tips which can help you to raise problem solvers. Number one, early introduction of chores, like Eastern parents do. Eastern parents introduce chores at very early age, 2, 3 years old, and you do it together, and it's fun. And initial programming is positive. They don't even know they're doing little jobs. And you train them before 5 years old to follow precise instructions to complete tasks. From 5 years old and 6 years old, you give them more chores, but with less instructions, so they can work it out. By the age of 7, 8, 9, child should be able to complete tasks independently and perform complicated tasks. You would be surprised. Eastern children do. And those children can take those skills outside of home to school and perform well. That is why some Eastern children come to Britain and they get all the A stars. Not because they have more brain cells. It's because they train themselves to perform tasks and to complete. As simple as that. At the age of 9, my daughter used to be left with a list of chores need to be done. I was so busy, I never had chance to explain. I was student, I was working, I was wife. So I used to just write down and leave it for her. And once I left, chores including contacting my customer, changing the appointment, and also get a better price. To my surprise, when I returned, she ticked all this and I said, well, what about the customer? She said, Mom, I found the customer in the address book. I talked and changed the appointment. What about the price? She said, they were happy to change the price. And I said, well, how did you do it? She said, well, I just asked them. And they said, they were delighted to talk to me and they asked if you could bring me with you next time. So she was 9 and she learned to communicate, to talk to people and not to be afraid, to ask for help, etc. Oh, one more thing. January 2024, I was walking in New York, Manhattan, and I saw a newspaper. I am from England, so the newspaper, I had to look what newspaper it is. It's called New York Post. And it had a headline which said, it's a screen damage. When I read, I was really surprised. It's related to my profession. It was about Drexel University research. They analyzed 1,920 children to see screen exposure, how much it affects children's development. So, apparently, in average, parents expose children to screen now 3 hours, 3 minutes. I can see you surely saying, yes, you agree with me, yes. It's a lot. And findings were really disturbing because they related effects to high rates of ADHD and neurodiverse conditions because they watched those children and children who were exposed to screen time too much, when they were 33 months, they were delayed in response, they couldn't sleep, they were irritable, they couldn't complete simple tasks, and they did not have skills of problem solving. So the conclusion they made to make parents aware that under 2 years old, no exposure to screen, unless it's video call apparently. From 3 years old, only under 1 hour. That's it, no more. They also watched 8 years olds. Every 1 child in 33 is diagnosed now with ADHD and neurodiverse condition. Whereas in 2017, the number was 1 in 44. And they think the screen damage is directly related to this. Why do we want to teach our children to be problem solvers? Because it's a power. It's a power to change things for better. Also, they can come up with crazy ideas when situations are difficult. And those children who have the skills, they will find what to do. They can build the future they want. They can become who they want to be. They can also train their brain to make logical choices over emotional. And most importantly, they can turn their dreams into reality. Let's raise exceptional, brilliant problem solvers And thank you for having me at MIT today. I absolutely loved it. Thank you.